So good morning, everybody. We're going to start this morning. A really warm welcome to you all. It's been a great response to this business breakfast meeting, which is our May business breakfast meeting sponsored by the Port of Cork. So thank you for all the support. I can't believe it's May already. We've had 5 breakfast meetings so far and they've all been fantastic. And again, thank you for all the support. A sincere thanks to John Crotty and all the team over here in Spike Ireland, because that's obviously where I am this morning. They very nicely organised through Dora Shipping Group to collect me this morning, bring me over, and it was just such a nice trip. It's a beautiful day today and it's a really nice place to visit. So this morning, we have a busy morning. We have a lot of speakers. So first of all, I'm going to do a big welcome to our guest speakers this morning. We have Conor Moulds, we have Captain Brian Fitzgerald, Pat Brennan, Mike King and Mick Horgan. Also in the audience this morning, we have Adam Cronin of DP Energy and Dave Ronayne from Mainport Shipping. So I just encourage all of you to use the chat function towards the end to ask questions, and anything you don't understand, and believe me, there's a lot of terminology there that is hard to comprehend, please put it in the chat forum or the Q&A section and the team will explain it to you on it. So the meeting is going to be recorded this morning and it will be able to view on our website in the coming days. So I suppose just to start off, floating offshore wind energy is the economic opportunity for our generation and is the key focus for our future. All the ingredients are already here in Cork Harbour, so for us to become the unparalleled hub for floating wind. Cove and Harbour Chamber will play a huge part in this as a key stakeholder and a project we absolutely wholly support. So when we look at the overall key words which come to mind when you look at this project, connectivity is one. It joins all the different parts of the harbour together. Employment is the potential to employ hundreds of people. Sustainable energy. The programme for government aims to have 5 gigawatts of offshore wind installed by 2030. And education. The National Maritime College, the Navy, MTU will be the key to driving further education in this area. Cork Harbour hasn't seen a boost to industry in this area since the 70s when the pharmaceutical industry came on board. So for this to be happening in the harbour and on our doorstep is just fantastic. So with all the above happening and Cove not only being the hotspot to visit, but also the place to work and live, improvements for access onto the Great Island is now absolutely critical. And even I was saying earlier this morning, I was going through my speech with my kids last night, and one of them is 13, and he just couldn't believe that all this is going to be happening in the harbour. So for the young generation to know more about this is absolutely crucial as well. So back down to kind of the fun part of the morning, we always have spotlights. So this morning we have Toddy from the Cove Community Hospital and we have Hendrik from Cove Tidy Towns. So Toddy, I'm going to hand over to you.
Good morning, Madam President, fellow members, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Toddy Stafford and I thank you for the opportunity today to put Cove Community Hospital in the spotlight. The hospital is approaching 200 years of dedication and service to the wider harbour community. It's somewhat unique in that it is classed as a voluntary hospital that is held in trust for the town of Cove. It is managed by a voluntary board and is in the true sense a community hospital. It is registered for 44 beds and currently employs up to approximately 65 staff in multidisciplinary roles. So the economic and social contribution to the locality is quite extensive. Quite a lot to contribute there from a wage point of view and from a care point of view. The main funding for the hospital is provided by the NTPF through the fair deal system on a per patient per week basis. Our local hospital does not receive any capital funding and yet has to comply with ever increasing needs regarding HICWA and safety standards and regulation, and all of that we do through our fundraising efforts and through the marvellous support that's out there. Now, it will be necessary to expand the bed capacity to enable our facility to cater for changing demographics and an ever-increasing demand. And therefore, this will also help to ensure the long-term viability of a marvellous care facility within our community. This is where the support of the Chamber in lobbying for funding and expansion will be so necessary and so very important. We especially want to thank today the local businesses and the community for the tremendous financial and other support given to our fundraising group, that's the Friends of Cove Hospital, over many years, which has enabled us to do so very much. In particular today, we'd like to acknowledge the likes of J&J, the Port of Cork, local supermarkets, the many clubs, many individuals. That generosity has enabled us to retain and enhance what we have and what we all may need, no doubtly, in our twilight years. So thank you all for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Toddy. And yes, the Cove Community Hospital actually visited there the other day on behalf of the Cove and Harbour Chamber. And what struck me is that each and every person in there is so well taken care of and so happy. And, you know, the old people, we do need to mind them. We're all going to get old one day. So thank you, Toddy. So over to you, Hendrik, who's chairperson of Cove Tidy Towns.
Good morning, Joanna, and thank you very much for the opportunity. I just want to take a minute to, I suppose, bust some of the myths about tidy towns, because most people seem to think that tidy towns is about litter, painting and flowers, and it is, but it's a lot more than that. The Tidy Towns competition was started by Board Fáilte in 1958. It became Cove Tidy Towns, started in 1976, so we have the minutes of the first meeting that we think is the first meeting. And in 1983, it joined with the Environment Committee of the Cove Task Force, which followed on from the time that Rome Dockyard and, you know, closed, and there was a big community effort that time to, you know, put Cove on the map and get employment going again. So over the years, the competition has evolved, and now it's judged under 7 different categories with 470 marks in total up for grabs every year. So it's judged in community or planning and involvement, streetscape and public spaces, nature and biodiversity, sustainability, that's doing more with less, tidiness and litter control, residential streets and housing areas, approach roads, streets and lanes. So you can see it's not all about paint, litter and flowers. Cove is doing exceptionally well in the competition. Not last year, there was no competition last year because of COVID, but the year before there was 980 entries in Ireland. That was towns, cities, villages, and Cove is in the top 30 in the country, which is quite an achievement for a town of our size. Glasslock won in 2009. They had 346 points, and Cove was just 8 points behind there. Kind of, you know, we'd look at our neighbours and we'd say, well, Carrigaline is 13 points behind Cove. Youghal and Kinsale are 5 points behind Cove, so we're doing better than each of those. Ballincollig, I suppose, is the top performer in County Cork, and they're within a couple of points of the winning town at the moment. So, and you know, we pride ourselves as a tourism destination, and Cove is just 4 points in the Tidy Towns competition behind hotspots Killarney and Kilkenny. So fair play to us all. So the town of Cove is what's entered in the competition. It's not Cove Tidy Towns. Cove Tidy Towns is the ambassador for the competition. So when we fill out the entry form, and the entry form this year is going to be about 100 pages because there's 2 years of work to tell people about, but we fill out a detailed entry telling the judges everything that happens in Cove. So that's all the stuff that's relevant to the competition, and that's not necessarily just stuff that Cove Tidy Towns has done. So this year we'll be highlighting that Cove Ramblers had an initiative to welcome Syrian refugees. We'll be highlighting that the Commodore Hotel has been repainted. We'll be highlighting the annual sponsorship of the flower displays by Doyle Shipping as you approach the Rushbrook side. We'll be mentioning the fabulous Port of Cork lights on Kennedy Pier at Christmas, and the Cork County Council stroke Cove Chamber Cove lights that were designed by Julia Vallone, which really upped the game in Cove last Christmas. We'll be mentioning the dishing of the footpaths by Cork County Council. If you drive around Cove, you'll see that you can now get a buggy or a wheelchair onto a footpath with no problem anywhere. And of course, the work done by Cove and Harbour Chamber, Cove Tourism, Cove Tidy Towns and Cork County Council last summer, working together to open Cove safely and to tell people that Cove is a great place to visit. And then, of course, there's local residents groups working all over the Cove. There's a lot of landscaping work being done at the lookout at the top of East Hill. And then, of course, we'll mention what Cove Tidy Towns does and the Trojan efforts of our volunteers, 52 weeks of the year. We don't stop. Some towns take the winter off. We never take the winter off. We work right throughout the year. Litter picking, painting, landscaping, and then driving all the initiatives that you'll see if you go around Cove. So in the past year, I suppose a year that many people found difficult, but we just ploughed on regardless. The mural in Carrigaloe was painted. The Velvet House Cross was reconstructed with wildlife sculptures put on it. The entire 5-foot wave was replanted and new signage put there. There was a panoramic sign put at the black railings on the Lake Road. And we re-landscaped the Titanic Garden. And we had an initiative for people to turn off their cars if they're not moving and do not idle, basically. We've recently sown 2 large areas of wildflowers. And last year, school children in Cove planted 1,000 trees that we sourced for them. So that was a huge amount of work. I think you've probably gathered that it's not just about Cove Tidy Towns and what we do, it's about what the community in Cove does. So everybody has a part to play. I really feel that Cove can win the Tidy Towns competition. I suppose perhaps when the streetscape work is done, that'll be our moment to shine really, really well. But if we work together, Cove can become Cove, or Ireland's tidiest town. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Hendrik. So now over to the order of the day. We have a lot of content to get through this morning, so we'll dive in. I will introduce each speaker individually, who will then give their presentation, which will be 3 to 5 minutes. So please pop your question into the chat forum and we'll endeavour to answer as many as we can. Ones that we don't answer, please email into the Chamber office and we will get an answer to you. Any buzzwords or terminology you don't understand, and believe you me, there's a lot of them, please again put them into the chat forum and the team will get back to you. So we'll start this morning with Conor Moles. Conor Moles is Chief Commercial Officer of the Port of Cork. He's responsible for the development and implementation of the Port's commercial strategy, including its integrated business development, marketing and public relations plans. Previously, he served as head of the National Maritime College of Ireland, a tripartite role which incorporated the managing directorships of his specialist joint venture companies. So over to you, Conor.
Thank you very much, Joanna. And firstly, thank you very much for the opportunity to act as the sponsors this year for what's been a hugely successful breakfast series. And for the opportunity today to speak to all the members and attendees about the Port of Cork's energy strategy. So I'm going to share with everybody a brief set of slides. And in the next 3 to 5 minutes, it's my objective really to outline the Port's approach to capitalising on energy transition. And then and by doing so, to set the scene really for my fellow panelists who will come on and talk then specifically about their companies and their focus. So, you bear with me, hopefully technology is going to work. And of course, technology always lets you down. Bear with me, because it's not moving. There we go, we're working. So, I'm going to go back now. So just in terms of setting that scene, the slide that you see before you, and again, thanks to our colleagues in Energy Cork for providing some of the statistics, gives you an overview physically of the Port of Cork. And what you see there in front of you are some of the current energy related activities, ranging from, as Joanna mentioned in our own opening address, the fantastic world-class facilities of UCC and MTU and the guys of both the National Maritime College and Beaufort Marroy facility. But we also have existing Bord Gáis, Whitegate, who you'll hear speak later on this morning, and indeed the ESB stations. And what I'd suggest you will see in the coming years, in the next 5 to 7 years, in fact, a very different slide comprising not just of the focus here on indeed transition fuels, but the renewable energy activities which we will look to harness in the coming years. So just to put it into context, Cork is already Ireland's primary energy hub, providing 25% of its energy demands. It's 20% of its electricity generating capacity. And one of the things also that makes the Port of Cork and indeed Cork such a well-positioned geographic area. It's not just its locality, its adjacency to the Celtic Sea, which we'll hear our offshore renewable speaker talking about later on, but also its access to the national gas grid, which is a result directly of the previous Kinsale field. And many of you will know the Port of Cork did originally look at an LNG FSRU facility in the Cork. That's no longer a primary focus of ours at this moment in time because of government policy on moving away from the importation of fracked gas. But certainly it may be something that we may look at into the future if we can source an appropriate well gas provider. But really the focus of today will be talking about that move towards the net zero future and embracing the renewable energy opportunities that we see before us. In terms of our own strategy, we mean business, and this is a hugely important part of the Port of Cork's future. And so much so, we developed and had approved in March a commercial energy strategy. And what's key about that descriptor is the word commercial. We, as a commercial semi-state, have a mandate to act in a commercial manner and to generate profits and make returns both to our shareholder and the government, but also to generate the revenue that will be used as reinvestment funds to ensure that the Port of Cork is a world-class port into the future. As I mentioned, we view the energy transition as an opportunity for Cork, one that we will embrace and support. But we also believe that this must be done in a balanced way. So what you will see from the Port of Cork in terms of our approach is a balanced approach to both transition fuels and indeed in then embracing the future sustainable energy sources. And that energy strategy that we've had approved has already identified a vast array of business opportunities for Port of Cork, ranging from LNG and offshore oil and gas, for example, right through to solar wave tidal, the hydrogen piece, and in particular, the burgeoning offshore wind piece, which will be a centre point of our discussions today. In terms of how we will approach and influence on this, in terms of our shareholder engagement, the Port of Cork is actually precluded from lobbying, and that's a challenge for us. So to move around that, to ensure that we give input to our shareholders in the government and to multiple government departments that are involved in developing our energy resources, we will be acting directly through the Irish Maritime Development Office. The OMDO have the mandate for the development of Ireland's indigenous and maritime business, and indeed attracting FDI. And through the good offices of the OMDO, the Port of Cork and indeed the other ports in the country will work and have access to and engage with the relevant government departments. But that doesn't mean that we won't engage with industry. So we are actively engaged with the MRIA, with Energy Cork, indeed with the British Irish Chamber and their energy infrastructure committees, Irish Wind Energy and others. And the idea being that while we will navigate around that preclusion for lobbying, we will engage actively with the industry body groups, we will advise from a technical perspective, and we will be a participant in that respect. And then finally, and really hugely important for us, is the engagement with our customers. So as I mentioned earlier on, we will be embracing a broad transition fuel and renewable energy approach. Irving Oil are our biggest customers, and Mike King is here today to speak to that. But also we'll be engaging with not just our established customers like Doyle's and Irish Mainport, who again will speak later on, but also new customers who we hope to develop long and successful partnerships like Green Rebel and indeed Blue Energy. And I know Brian and Mike Horgan will speak to that today. So for us, in rounding up, the Port of Cork will engage with all customers to ensure that the harbour becomes a centre point, not only for the ongoing maintenance of offshore renewable energy fields, because I know certainly the Port of Cork is already engaged in survey work to support identifying fields. It would certainly be well suited for operations maintenance. But we also believe that the Port of Cork is a prime location for assembly. And that's certainly something that we will look to focus on, looking at our own land banks, but also working with particularly Doyle's as they look to develop their exciting plans around the dockyard. And I'm sure we hear an awful lot more about that from Pat O'Brennan as we go forward. So that's the Port of Cork's approach, and I'm delighted to take any questions.
So, Conor, thanks a million for that. Just a question in simple terms. Could you tell us what is it that underpins the Port of Cork's approach as you develop and deliver your energy strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think in terms for us, in succinct terms, it's a balanced, commercially driven approach. So we view the next 15 to 20 year horizon as a time when we are actually on a journey towards net zero. And on that journey, we will embrace all transition and renewable fuel activities to ensure that we generate the revenue that Cork needs to reinvest to ensure that we are a world-class port, that we move towards that net zero sustainable renewable energy area, but capitalize on the transition fuel piece that gets us there.
Great. Thank you so much, Conor. So now we're going to move on to Pat O'Brennan. Pat O'Brennan is Deputy CEO of Doyle Shipping Group and a member of the board since 2001 and has worked with the company since 1989. Pat's background is in ship agency and chartering. Pat has also been involved in the onshore wind logistics in Ireland, and lately, since 2013, has been involved in the last 5 major offshore wind farms that were built and pre-assembled in Belfast Harbour. Pat has also been involved in the wind energy totaling over 2 gigawatts in the last 21 years. So over to you, Pat.
Thanks, Joanna. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity as well. I'm just going to share my screen there. I hope you can see that. Can you see that, Joanna?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So good morning, everybody. I will just run you through this hopefully quite quickly. That's an aerial view of our dockyard facility in Cork. Hang on now, and of course, bear with me. Like you, Conor, now it won't go on. There we go. So just to give you an overview, guys, of Doyle Shipping, a lot of people will know us. So Doyle Shipping Group are owned by Conor and Frank Doyle. We employ 650 people on the island of Ireland, and a fair number of them are employed in Cork Harbour. Just gives you an idea of the various locations we have. The dark ones are the physical offices we have in Ireland. This gives you an idea of the services then that we provide on behalf of our customers. And what we're talking about today is renewable energy. So it's under the Shipping and Terminal Management division. Just here, in relation to onshore wind, we've been handling projects, John has mentioned, since probably the year 2000. And we're at present, we handle in most of the ports around Ireland. The pictures you'll see there are projects that were handled, onshore projects in Ringaskiddy. So at the moment, we would operate for all these big companies down the bottom, which are Siemens, Vestas, Enercon, Nordex, Senvion, and GE. And our job, if you look at the picture there, we unload the turbines using the Port of Cork's cranes. We then bring them to a storage area in Ringaskiddy, and from there, then they're re-delivered onto specialized transport and brought to the various sites around the country, wherever the project is. So after the onshore projects came offshore wind projects, fixed projects in the west coast of the UK. And we have an office in Belfast, and through that, we started to get involved in 2013 in the first project. That was 108 turbines. It's interesting because those turbines were 2.3 megawatts, and the turbines for the future that we're looking at are 15 megawatts. So it's 7 times the size. So we've been involved in the 5 major projects in Belfast for offshore wind. And just showing you this slide here, these are the foundations. So these were brought into Belfast Port. They are put onto the quay, and then they're put back up onto what's called a jack-up barge. So These here will show you, these are 100-meter blades that we would have handled in Belfast as well. Again, you discharge them off the ship, you store them on the quay, and then you redeliver them back out onto a barge that brings them out to the site. This will give you a much better idea of what happens or what had happened in Belfast. So these are called monopiles here, and these are transition pieces. These are the foundations. They go into the seabed, and on top of them then are the turbine pieces. This facility in Belfast was built specifically for offshore wind. Belfast Port spent about 65 million euro, and it's a 50-acre site. So from that, we got our idea in relation to Cork Dockyard. The owners of our company have had lots of offers to sell Cork Dockyard over the last 20 odd years, and they've never wanted to. Their hope is to bring back jobs into the region again, into the area, and we think now we found an ideal project for that. So from our experience in Belfast, then we've come and we've looked at what we have, which is 44 acres, very close to the entrance to Cork Harbour. And we started discussions a year ago with some of the big floating developers. So we went away and we came up with a plan for them. And basically this is what we have put forward as the first proposal to them. Now, this probably will change in time, but just to give you a little idea of, at the moment, there are warehouses here, and there's no doubt that the yard does need some investment of sorts. But what we can offer to them is they bring in these floating foundations, which are the yellow ones. I'm not sure whether my cursor is on that and you can see that. They will bring them in like that, and then a crane will pre-assemble them in Cork Harbour. From there, then, they will be brought out to the site. And in the first project that you're looking at, probably around 60 each project, but that 60 turbines is the equivalent of 1 gigawatt of power, which is phenomenal, it's huge. So the plan that we would have in the dockyard would be, we would need to refurbish a lot of the existing quays, possibly put in a ro-ro berth. But the beauty of this project is that everything comes in by sea and goes out by sea. So this is the road here, this is the main road you're heading out onto Cove. There will be very little disruption on that road. The only time would be possibly when we're constructing it, but after that then it is purely in and out from the sea. So there's two parts to it. So when we say pre-assembly, that is piecing together these giant turbines here, and then they're towed out outside Cork Harbour with local tugs. And then after that, when they sit out in the site, you have the possibility then for operations and maintenance. And if you look at this office here, it's about a 10,000 square foot office. And there's a very good hope of a lot of good local high paying jobs. The operations and maintenance tends to last for 25 years. So potentially local people, you've got the rail here, people can travel in and out and work from there. We just feel we have something good to offer. So these are the projects that are potentially out there. They're huge. They're all 700, 800 megawatts. So we just feel in Cork Harbour, we have something really good to offer. And if you combine it then with the National College, we can see a situation where the local people can be trained in the college for these good paying jobs, get trained up there and just move across the water then and get into situ with their new jobs on the O&M side. So ultimately, this is what we can see. We can see a pre-assembling marshalling terminal in the dockyard. Once they are on site, they then need to be operated and maintained. So we can see a base. We can see an economic cluster happening in Ringaskiddy, where lots of companies that are involved in this would get set up in Ringaskiddy in a free port zone. We have widespread support from the government ministers, which is great. We've got the Taoiseach has given full support. Michael McGrath and also Simon Coveney as well. So thank you very much, and hopefully that gives you a quick idea of our plans.
So Pat, thank you very much. If I may ask you a question.
You're on mute there, Joanna.
Sorry, Pat, just a question, and thank you for the presentation. What could this development in Cork Harbour mean to the wider public of Cove and surrounding areas?
Yeah, thanks, Joanna. I think initially there certainly could be about 100 jobs in construction, but the bigger one is the long-term operations and maintenance. If we were successful in getting 2 projects, you're looking at around 300 jobs that are 25 years is the term of the operations and maintenance, Joanna. So that's the kind of numbers that we've seen being mentioned, and in our discussions with the developers, that's, you know, it's about 120, 130 per each project. So it's pretty substantial. And then there's the other add-ons of the tug hire and the port side of it then as well. So there's a lot more additional jobs would come out of it, you know.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Pat, for your presentation.
No
So now we're going to move on to Captain Brian Fitzgerald, whom is the Irish Director of External Affairs and Stakeholder Liaison, and represents the group, focusing on Irish projects as exemplars in community engagement and trust building. He enjoyed a long and successful career with Ireland's naval service, including 2 periods as a ship's captain, before ultimately serving as the Navy's operational commander. His love of the sea, desire to protect Ireland's maritime interests, and his extensive career experience drive him in his current role. Brian is also a board member of the Irish charity Go. So over to you, Brian. You're on mute, Brian. You're okay. Can you talk now? We're not hearing you.
Brian, do you have headphones plugged in or something? We can't hear you. No.
So will we move on to somebody else, or can maybe come back to Brian Lee, will we?
Yeah, we'll come back to you, Brian.
Okay, so we'll actually move over to you, Mick Horgan. Michael Mick is a graduate of the National Maritime College of Ireland, a Master Mariner with a wealth of operational, offshore and commercial experience within the marine industry. He spent the first 10 years of his career working with BP and the latter 15 years with Chevron, where he has held senior roles in West Africa, London, California, Dubai and Scotland. Mick now leads Green Rebel from his hometown of Crosshaven, having made the transition from working with oil majors to renewable energy. So over to you, Mick.
Thank you very much, Madam President Joanne, for having me here today representing Green Rebel. So I guess we've probably been in the paper a bit over the past few months since our inception last October, and we've had you know, it's been a hugely exciting time for us and for the company and for the people that are working with us. Our business is primarily data, and I still don't know whether to pronounce it data or data. Coming from an American company, it's data, so I'm going to stick with that. But basically that's our business. Our business is data acquisition, and we like to see ourselves as a kind of a one-stop shop for whatever the developers need to make their projects a reality. So we have 3 survey vessels at the moment. We've just received or just took delivery of a brand new one recently, which hasn't it's not in the public domain yet because we're still getting it ready, but it's there now. We're just about ready to start testing all the equipment that's been fitted, and we have also just taken delivery of an aircraft which is at Cork Airport now, and we're hugely excited to be going up there tomorrow morning to meet the pilots and look at the equipment and possibly go for a spin around the harbour in it. And it's just another string in our bow, basically. We acquired Crosshaven Boatyard, which is just over 9 acres. And we see this as being, you know, a very strategic location for what needs to happen with respect to the development offshore. And it's brilliant to hear Pat just speak there about the plans for Cork Harbour and what they're going to be doing there in improving the infrastructure, because it's going to tie in really closely with what we need ourselves. And where I guess myself and Pat and Connor will be speaking closely in the near future about what's going to happen there. So we have just had to put together a server up in Cork Airport, a marine data server, which is you know, a big bit of kit, which we've just had to rent space up there to house that, with all the ancillary services required for cooling the server, air conditioning, you know, fireproof, set up there, the whole lot. And that's because our aircraft is, you know, downloads so much data every time it takes off. So basically, our business divisions are the aircraft, the geophysical, geotechnical, and metocean data boys. That's a picture of our aircraft right now. That's the nose pod that you see in the front. It looks a bit weird, but it houses, you know, state-of-the-art camera equipment, 150 megapixel camera equipment, capable of 150 frames per second, with 2 centimeter resolution, flying at 1,800 feet. And that really, I think it's well, I don't think, I know it's best in class, really. And the gear that we have on board there is better than our competitors, really. And the fact that we can fly so high it's far less intrusive to the birds and mammal surveys that you know, have to be undertaken. So basically, every field must be flown for 2 years before anything can happen in the development stage. So we're actually ready to go, and we're going to start surveying, you know, right now. So that's our plan. We're basically embarking on what's going to be the largest survey ever undertaken on the coast of this country, and with a multi-client approach. So every field which overlaps, we're going to acquire that data required for the development, store the data, have the data there, and whenever the developers need it, we'll be able to give them that data, and it will be absolutely state-of-the-art. When we go down to the geophysical side of things, we have, with our survey vessels, we've invested millions in state-of-the-art equipment. The resolution, which I've seen from our tests and surveys so far, it's just unbelievable compared to anything else which has been available in the past. And then our other business division is metocean LiDAR buoys, which are the most advanced buoys in the world. So currently there's 2 sides of those buoys being manufactured in France, in Toulon and Bordeaux, and our plan is to bring all of that manufacture back to Crosshaven. So and all of the assembly and also the deployment. So that's our long-term vision there for the metocean buoys. In terms of job creation, again, this kind of ties back to what Pat was saying with what's going to be happening there in Cork, there, the docklands and this and that. Operation and maintenance is something which we're going to be looking at big time ourselves. In our business plan, I mean, we've got 3 vessels now. We are actively looking at obtaining another vessel in the near future with far greater capabilities. We're possibly looking for a DP2 vessel, you know, with which would be able to really cater for the geotechnical side of the site investigation. We have since October, we're up to 46 people employed now, and it is literally increasing by the week. So we've got a very young, dynamic workforce, and actually the excitement within the workforce is palpable at the moment. And we've got, I had a guy coming up to me yesterday just saying, Mick, it's so great to see the emails pouring in, the phones constantly ringing, the businesses is coming. So it's really, it's really happening. Val Cummins put a post there a couple of days ago on LinkedIn, and I think she compared the Atlantic and the Irish coast to the new Gulf, really, and that is exactly, she couldn't have been more accurate, really, in that analogy. Yeah, that's about it for me, really. It's we're a new company, hugely excited, the business is coming in, and we're just delighted to be a part of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mick. So Mick, a question for you. Everyone speaks about the importance of the Irish supply chain. Can you suggest any ways in which to safeguard Irish businesses during the development phase of offshore wind farms?
Okay, thanks, Joanna. So basically, if I were to draw a parallel with what's happening now with what has occurred in the past, with respect to the North Sea oil boom that occurred, we'll say in the 60s, 70s and 80s, and up to the 90s, really. And if you compare Norway to how Norway handled it and how the UK handled it, I think we have a huge amount to learn from that. So Norway really did protect their own supply chain. And what it has done for them is made them one of the richest countries in the world, with 1.3 trillion dollars in their sovereign wealth kind of pension fund. And even last year, in the middle of a pandemic, they increased that pension fund by 90 billion, just playing around with stocks and shares. And we need to do the same thing, because at the moment there was a Met Ocean LiDAR buoys being deployed in the Codling Bank last week by a company called Delta Marine, which were originally based in the Shetlands, but they were bought over by GIFMAR, which are now based in Marseille. So it's a 100% French-owned company now. The Codling Bank itself is owned by EDF, which is basically the French version of the ESB. And then so basically, and those French LiDAR Met Ocean buoys that were being deployed are 100% French manufactured and subsidized by French government. So that's a lesson, really. Unfortunately, it's occurring right now, but it's a lesson in what we should not be doing. So you've got the EDF field, Codling Bank, and what you're looking at there is 100% French supply chain. So that is what we really need to speak to the government about, because if we give it away, like what happened in the UK, then those jobs, that economy, the revenue generation and the future for our children's children will be lost. So there must be a massive emphasis on the importance of preserving a wholly Irish supply chain as much as possible. So that's what I'd say there.
Lovely. Thanks a million, Mick. So we're going to now move on to Captain Brian Fitzgerald. Are you okay? Brian, can you hear me? I can't hear you there, Brian. Can you hear me? I can't hear you. We can't hear you, Brian. So I'm actually going to move on to Mike King, and we'll come back to Brian then. Is that all right, Lee?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. So Mike King is commercial manager at Irving Oil, who own and operate the Whitegate Oil Refinery and top oil business in Ireland. Mike leads a team covering responsibility for feedstock supply, refinery production planning, renewable fuels, and development of long-term strategies. Mike has wide experience in the oil industry, covering commercial, trading, and operational roles. So over to you, Mike.
Okay, Joanna. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for having us on this morning. Can you see the screen now, Joanna?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Let's see if slideshow works. There we go. So we've been getting a glimpse of the future, and that's absolutely great. I'm going to kind of step back to the present, if you like, in terms of energy for the moment, but then maybe very quickly take us back towards the future and how that transition is going to work and how they might meet in the middle at some stage. But first of all, a little bit about Irving Oil. Irving Oil is a family-held business out of New Brunswick in Canada on the west coast, the Atlantic coast of Canada. The company is about 100 years old at this stage, but the interest in Ireland is much more recent. Bought the Whitegate refinery in 2016, and then continued the investment in Ireland by acquiring the Top Oil business in 2019. So have the oil refinery and the bones of 200 retail sites around Ireland right now. Just a picture of where we operate from, and graphic is not to scale, obviously, but I think what it kind of demonstrates is that the company actually operates the most westerly oil refinery in Europe and the most easterly oil refinery in North America. And you can see there where the main activities are. If you've flown into Boston at any time, it's more than likely that you've been fueled with Irving Oil jet fuel at that location. Back into Ireland, you've got Whitegate Oil Refinery, we've got the Top Oil Terminal in Dublin, a whole bunch of retail sites around, trading office in London, and we have a blending operation out of Amsterdam where we have some storage tanks. Let's just jump into Whitegate, and forgive me for the oil business terminology in barrels, but those are the numbers kind of attached to Whitegate. You see down at the end, the 75,000 barrels a day is about equivalent to 12 million litres of fuel that's manufactured every day out of Whitegate. A whole bunch of products there down at the bottom. Let me just focus on one or two of them. In terms of transport fuels, diesel, Ireland is quite unusual in that 80% of our liquid transport fuels are diesel. That's very high by any international perspective. So only 20% gasoline, which is petrol. So yeah, a little unusual in that sense. Likewise on heating fuels, you see them there. Kerosene is the one that you'd be most familiar with, and again, it is the most prevalent fuel for heating in Ireland. Kerosene is actually the same thing as jet fuel. There's very little difference between the two. So you know, as we start an energy transition, about 60% of Ireland's energy comes from oil right now, but clearly the growth piece is going to be around renewable fuels, and already for the past 10 years or so, when you filled up with petrol or with diesel, you would have had a renewable component of that, and up to this year, probably about 10% is renewable. But that really needs to take a step change, and we need new products to do that. So we are developing new products. Renewable diesel is the one that's probably going to have to do all the heavy lifting, certainly for this decade as ambition increases for decarbonization, until the products and the projects that the guys are talking about, offshore wind, hydrogen, all those kind of new renewable fuels come into play. But yeah, so this year, this next decade, it'll be around renewable fuel. The following decade, it'll be more synthetic liquid fuels, and then all those other technologies that will come in behind. Last slide, and I think lots of people have referred to this already, and we kind of really shouldn't underestimate it, that about a third of Ireland's energy demand is manufactured in Cork Harbour. You see the BGE power plant there, ESB over here, Cala-Closinggas have a bottling plant for LPG, and there's Whitegate in the middle. The actual processing plant is a relatively small piece of the overall 350 acres site. So as you head off on an energy transition, this is where we're starting from, and it's going to be really interesting times in this decade and into the next as the energy transition starts to take hold. Back over to you, Joanna.
Hi, okay, Mike, thanks a million for your presentation. So just a question to you. Representing the oil industry and oil refining, being interested to hear your thoughts on the exciting future for renewable energy production in Cork Harbour and how it fits into the future of your business.
Yeah, and it's, yeah, so first off, really kind of would wish all the new industries well, and look forward to working with the companies that are talking today. It is a really exciting future for Cork Harbour, and it's that step into the energy transition that we're talking about. And you know, that energy transition isn't going to be linear. There'll be steps forward, there'll be setbacks. I think, you know, all the companies today are talking about technologies and how we apply those. And one of the really important things we need to do is keep an open mind to the technologies that we're going to use. I mean, from our perspective, we're going to be really interested in the products that offshore wind are going to give us, both in terms of renewable energy and green hydrogen, which will be a big part of your typical offshore wind project. And you know, if you take just that example of hydrogen, only 5 years ago, it would barely have got a mention when you were talking about decarbonization pathways. Today, it's front and center of practically every conversation you hear. It would be a feedstock to that renewable diesel I'm talking about. It would be a feedstock to synthetic fuels. So I think it's a great example of how we need to keep an open mind, because we don't know some of the technologies that are going to be used yet. But certainly it's the start of a big change and a very exciting period for everybody.
Lovely, thanks a million, Mike. So we're going to go just back to Captain Brian Fitzgerald just to see if we can hear him, and if we can't, the presentation will be sent out to everybody who's registered here this morning. So will we try Lee there with Brian?
Johanna, just trying once more. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. So I'm just going to do a bit of an intro for you, if you don't mind. So where we are. Okay, so Captain Brian Fitzgerald is the Irish Director of External Affairs and Stakeholder Liaison, and represents the group, focusing on the Irish projects such as exemplars in community engagement and trust building. He enjoyed a long and successful career with Ireland's naval service, including 2 periods as a ship captain before ultimately serving as the Navy's operational commander. His love of the sea, desire to protect Ireland's maritime interests, and his extensive career experience drive him in his current role. Brian is also a board member of the Irish charity Go. So over to you, Brian.
Thank you very much. And I'll just share my screen on the on my presentation slides. And apologies for any sound issues earlier. I'm delighted to be here on behalf of Simply Blue Group. Who we are. We're an Irish company based, headquartered in Cork, and we were co-founded by Sam Roach Perks from Youghal and Hugh Kelly from Dublin. We're a leading early stage developer of transformative and sustainable floating wind, wave energy and aquaculture projects in Ireland and the UK, and now indeed with a global footprint. Our offshore site, directly of interest to Cork, would be the one in the area of the decommissioned Kinsale gas field, and another one west of Loop Head, known as Western Star. So most specifically for Cork Harbour, the Emerald project is the most significant one. We also have a project known as the Erebus project in the Celtic Sea off the coast of Wales. We hope that by 2030, to see floating wind platforms installed in the area of the Emerald project at the site of the Kinsale gas field after decommissioning. Why are we doing this? It's very important to appreciate the national policy and this extraordinary shift, which has been mentioned by other speakers, towards climate change and renewable energy resources. So Ireland has committed by 2050 to deliver 25 gigawatts of renewable energy. And I want to put that into perspective, what 25 gigawatts would mean. Today, Ireland produces 4.5 gigawatts of renewable energy. And in fact, in 1930, and in that diagram, or that old photograph, you can see Ireland Crusher. That plant was built to provide for all of the energy requirements of Ireland. And it was in fact less than 1 gigawatt. 86 megawatts was the size that Harbour Crusher produced. So I think you'll appreciate the scale of this. Secondly, then, are we the right regime for it? Does Ireland possess the right wind regime? And I think all of us in Ireland, we don't have to dwell on this. We know it because we have this beautiful wild Atlantic way that Ireland possesses an extraordinary wind regime. In fact, we're rich for it. But a second point that we need to dwell on just for a moment by way of information is that Ireland sits on a continental shelf, and therefore the water is relatively shallow around our coast. And that continental shelf allows you to develop floating offshore wind farms, offshore and indeed over the horizon, as Simply Blue Energy is endeavouring to do. How will we do it? We will do it out of Cork and out of Clare, perhaps plugging into Moneypoint in Clare, by building supply chain, which you've heard about already very clearly from the other speakers this morning. Local industry, surveying, assembly, operations and maintenance, both ashore and at sea, and everything that is contained within the Cork ready to float. There's also the route to market, the domestic demand of electricity and or gas, and the export and this potential drive towards green hydrogen and the fuels for the shipping and aviation industries of the future. Simply Blue Energy heavily emphasizes its values. Our values are integrity, courage, passion, responsibility, and diversity. But a little more than that. We want to prove that we will put our values into action, and therefore we have selected two things that we will promote in everything that we do. One is a sustainable future. And the second one, more specifically, and at the operation and tactical and community-based levels, we wish to promote and be associated with the safety of life at sea. One little shout out there in terms of our values in action is that World Ocean Days is on the June the 8th, and I'd like to encourage everybody to engage with their oceans for that day. Our stakeholder engagement, and I'm in charge of stakeholder engagement, we have decided, in line with our values, to turn the traditional approach to stakeholders on its head, and we intend to prioritize civil society, followed by industry and followed by government. Government and industry go without saying, but it is civil society who will be the ultimate beneficiaries of all that we endeavour to do, and we wish to engage with them as our priority, using the old adage of the naval strategist Alfred T. Mahan, public opinion in operation constitutes national policy. So the key messages from today are, in Cork, we will deliver 1.3 gigawatts of floating wind by 2031. Floating is now ready. It is of its time. Floating is necessary because it is highly unlikely that we will meet the national requirements to deliver renewable energy resources to the amount that we intend to do so with fixed alone. And floating costs are falling rapidly, predicted to reach parity with fixed by the end of the decade. And so our vision in Simply Blue Energy is that Cork will, and I was delighted to hear Conor refer to it, and let's go there. Cork already is Ireland's green energy hub. Let's sustain it and build it thus. Cork is ready to float in terms of building supply chain. And just as a master message from Simply Blue Energy, our greatest responsibility is seen by us is to be good ancestors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. So a question for you. Do you want to just, a question for you. How best can Cork Harbour prepare for the opportunities that may flow from the Emerald project?
Yeah, thank you very much, Joanna. That's a great question. I think what we've heard from all the other speakers really has nailed that in terms of the detail. But on the two headings, the master headings really are, we must build supply chain and we must prepare for route to market. And what I would emphasize is, because these turbines are projected to arrive and go on site in 2030, that tells us that the decade of the 2020s is for building supply chain and route to market.
Lovely. Thanks, Brian. Can you stop sharing your screen there? Is it okay?
Yep.
Great, thank you. So we're going to go to the Q&A section in a minute, but I just want to acknowledge that we couldn't fit everybody in this morning. This is such an enormous project that really we're going to have to do a couple of sessions regarding renewable energy over the coming months. But I would like to extend a warm welcome to Dave Renane of Mainport Shipping. And Dave, maybe just to say a few brief words, if you don't mind.
Yeah, good morning, Joanna, and thanks for the invitation. My first time ever attending a Cove Chamber of Commerce event.
Delighted to have you.
I recognise some faces there. I haven't seen Dino in years, wherever Dino was, and John Gately. We have the Mainport Geo, ladies and gentlemen, that's down at the dockyard at the moment, so you'll see it. It's the red ship. Those of you that know Mainport ships, they're normally painted in bars blue, but the owner had left lots of drums of red paint on the ship already, so we decided to use the existing paint, so it's now a Cork red. Coming back to Michael Horgan's point about trying to encourage Irish supply chain, it's going to be a bit challenging for all of us because we are in a free market. It's a European free market, and obviously we're all entitled to trade all over Europe. But in practical terms, we all know that if you try to get business down in France, unless you're French and speak French, it's very difficult, and similarly in Italy. So we were the underbidder in that coddling job from EDF, and they awarded it to a company called MMT, who were Swedish, and afterwards then they decided they informed EDF they didn't have the ship available. So it's very challenging when you're dealing with very large utilities who look at a European market. And in contrast to that, we've set up a company now down in Italy with Italian management. And we're delighted we recently won the marine first job with them for a company called Renexia, who are the largest utility in Italy, and they are building Italy's first offshore wind farm. So we'll be down there in July. But we would not have won that, in my opinion, unless we had local Italian management. So I don't know how we're going to try to ensure that. Sometimes the Irish psyche is that you try to give it to non-Irish people. Sometimes there's a perception that non-Irish ships are better than Irish ships, which is not the case. But maybe when all working together with government, we can try to encourage all the developers to try to support the Irish supply chain. But I don't think we can make it a legal a mandatory requirement. It's just to encourage everyone to try to use Irish. That's it, Joanna.
Lovely, thank you, Dave. And also here this morning we have Adam Cronin from DP Energy. So welcome, Adam, and you might just say a few brief words, if you don't mind.
Yes, thank you very much, Joanna. Good morning, everybody. I'm aware we're over the hour, so I'll just take 60 seconds with the hope that I come back and give a more comprehensive presentation sometime soon. So DP Energy are a renewable energy developer. We're Irish owned, we're Cork based, and we have 30 years experience in developing renewable developments, both in wind, solar, and wave tidal as well. And our most recent projects, and one in particular of note for this group, is the Inishelga floating offshore wind farm, which would be sitting adjacent to Brian's Simply Blue development, spanning a distance between Cork Harbour to Dungarvan. It'll be 1 gigawatt floating, and just to give you an idea of that, 1 gigawatt would power 300,000 homes, so quite a significant development. For this project and for some of our other projects on the West Coast and East Coast, we have a joint venture partnership with Iberdrola, who are the world leader in wind energy development and one of the world's largest utilities. And we think that's a very good team that we have, where we have local Irish-owned company supported by international large expertise. Just want to finish up by saying everybody here has mentioned the supply chain. That's really important to us. If you look for me on LinkedIn, you can contact me. I'd be happy to talk to any service providers, suppliers, etc. to this sector. We're already in discussions with the likes of Pat and Doyle's and Mick and Green River Marine and Dave in Mainport as well. So, and I look forward to, thanks for the time, look forward to talking to you again with a bit more detail. Thank you, Joanna.
Lovely. Thank you, Adam. So look, we're going to boot on with the questions now. So I'm just conscious of time. Mamie Brown is here representing both Cove Zero Waste and Chase. So Mamie, if you don't mind, I'm actually just going to, I hope I pronounced that right. I'm going to ask the two questions that were emailed in this morning. So Cove Zero Waste is interested in developing an energy plan for Great Island, which involves moving towards 100% renewable energy, hopefully by 2030. What role could Simply Blue play in helping the community achieve that target? To you, Brian.
Yes, thank you, Joanna. First of all, we're delighted to hear of the Cove initiative to move towards zero emissions. Simply Blue Energy is of the same mind. So Simply Blue Energy will be endeavouring to promote everything that has to do with reducing carbon emissions and embracing renewables. Now, at the moment, obviously, we're developing a floating offshore wind farm that's going to bring electrons and power ashore. And if that power ashore can contribute in any way to reducing the energy footprint of Cove, obviously we'll have an indirect involvement there. In terms of some specifics as to what we can do, because it's a community-related project and we want to engage with community, I'd like to talk to you directly which is on that particular initiative to understand it, to understand the detail of it, to see exactly how we could plug into it, maybe to fund and to support it.
Thank you, Brian. So another question then from Chase. In the development of the wind farm, it is vital that the environment and fisheries are given maximum protection. In terms of Simply Blue's responsibility and sustainable governance, what steps will it take to protect the marine ecosystem during investigation, development and operation, and is an environmental impact assessment required?
Yeah, very good. Thank you for that as well, Joanne. I meant to say earlier in my presentation, and just gives me a great opportunity to say it now, but we have to engage with the marine users from the perspective that we want to try and ensure that their use of the sea is sustained and interrupted in the minimum way possible, and in the hope that they can sustain their operations accordingly. And in that regard, our engagement with fishers is crucial. And we just even had a workshop yesterday with our fishers and environmentalists and had a tremendous feedback. We're currently in a listening phase. We want to hear from everybody, but very specifically on anything to do with consents. The entire consenting process for the development of offshore wind will be subject to environmental impact assessment, and Ireland is already making some specific progress in this. The Marine Area Planning Bill will overarch all that's required there. In other words, there's this move away from terrestrial-based planning approach to understanding the sea, and the national marine planning framework actually went through the Dáil last night and was passed, which is a great indicator that the processes around everything to do with consents and environmental impact assessment will all be in proper order, and we'll be subject to that. We will be submitting, just for your information, we'll be submitting our environmental impact assessment for the Emerald project of Cork Harbour around 2024, and everything between now and then is about building the data and the surveys necessary to make a comprehensive application.
Thanks a million, Brian. So we have time for one more question, because I'm conscious that we have TT James O'Connor here this morning, who's going to say a few words of support towards the whole project. So Donald Kassan has a question here from Mick and Pat. Are there plans for offshore H2 production? Have you given any thought of using existing gas infrastructure as supply chain route to market to the market? That's from Donald Kassan, Gas Networks Ireland.
Pat, do you want to go, Pat, or will I go?
I think if you can go, I'm not sure. Is it Mike King probably more so than the two of us? I would say Mick, you know.
Come here, that's the best pass in the buck thing I've ever heard in my life. Is it over to you,
Mike? Do you want to answer that?
Why? Thanks, guys. Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, I think you need a whole different presentation or discussion around the route to market for the various pathways on hydrogen. You green, you blue. There's all these technicalities around it, and I think what Donald's getting at is coming back to this bit around Cork Harbour having existing infrastructure, which gives it an advantage you ain't above anywhere else in the country, really, quite frankly. And that's one pathway that you'd have some hydrogen production at the site of the renewable wind turbine. You could have that on shore. You could make the hydrogen into a hydrogen carrier, and that's an indirect way to store your renewable energy that you're making offshore. Because I think by the time the guys have finished building all this offshore wind, we're going to have an export market for it, because it's going to be way and above anything that we would use domestically. So it's finding those pathways to the market, and I guess that's part of my reference earlier. We don't know the technologies yet, and we need to keep an open mind as to how we're going to achieve this, because we're going to need all of these technologies to get on that curve that we're talking about for an energy transition. So hopefully, guys, I've answered your question for you there.
Thank you, Mike.
Mike, just on the back of that, I would like to say that we are looking at hydrogen, and it's very much in our focus, and we will be making a press release in the coming weeks about our future plans in that respect.
Okay, great. So I'm not going to ask any more questions now, but Jackie Coakley, and I suppose it's relevant to the younger generation. I'm just going to read out her question. And Jackie, the Maritime College will actually be doing a presentation with Cove and Harbour Chamber in October. So we'll be delving more into the career opportunities for the generation ahead of us. So basically, she just wanted to know that if these companies would engage with the schools, particularly the career guidance teachers, to offer advice on third level education, and to guarantee that we have local qualified candidates in the area. So that's a really good point. And I mean, absolutely, Jackie, that's on everybody's mind, because we, a lot of us have kids, so that's the area that they're going to go. So thank you. So again, the whole area of sustainable energy and offshore wind energy is just so massive, and there's an awful lot to cover. And it's something that is a project that both Cove and Harbour Chamber realise that we do have a responsibility to make sure that our members and our non-members are kept informed and educated about what this means for the whole harbour area. So we're definitely going to engage on a few of these breakfast meetings regarding renewable energy with all different spins on it, and we will keep you up to date. And if you haven't signed up to our newsletter, you might do so, and then you'll be able to keep up to date on what's going on. So before we finish up, TD James O'Connor, who's been a huge support to Cove and has been lobbying the road and different developments in Cove. So you're very welcome, James. You might just say a few words, please.
Thanks very much to the President, Joanna, and to the committee with Cove Chamber. It's a huge honour and privilege to speak to you for the very first time since my election to Dáil Éireann in February of 2020. Of course, it's a very exciting time for so many projects right around Cork Harbour, but also throughout the I suppose the greater county as well, because the current government is doing quite a number of actions that will be looking at the existing National Development Plan and other major capital infrastructure projects. So this really has represented an enormous opportunity for the people of Cove, for the people of Cork Harbour in general, to try and address some of the infrastructure deficit that we have, and in particular the Cove Access and the Photo Road, of course, as many people know it as, to address that particular issue. We heard so much this morning about the whole opportunity around the area of renewable energy and what that could mean for the harbour area and for Cove. But I think it's important that the access on and off of the island needs to be addressed. And I just want to give you a brief outline of some of the work that we've been doing here in Leinster House on that particular issue. And I want to give full credit and to commend the Cove and Harbour Chamber for the fantastic work that you've been doing, Joanna. It has not gone unrecognised, and it's very helpful for me as an Oireachtas representative for the constituency of Cork East to actually have the backing of the Cove Harbour and the Cove and Harbour Chamber when I'm meeting with our ministers here on the issue of the Photo Road and upgrading that particular piece of infrastructure. So last week I met with the Minister for Public Expenditure, Michael McGrath, who spoke here with the Chamber recently on the issue of trying to, I suppose, get funding for this particular matter. But obviously there's a complication in the sense that the Department of Transport's recommendations are what is key when the NDP is going to be reviewed. And I'm under the understanding at present that process should be finished at the end of June. I'm very hopeful that the Cove issue around the road in Cove and the photo road will actually be included in the NDP, because if it is, it gives a funding commitment to address that particular matter. That is what has been holding this back for so many decades, is that when it came to funding, the project fell down on a number of occasions because there were plans in the past. There are currently now plans being put forward by Cork County Council. And just to reference the serious work of your local councillors in your own area from all parties and none, who've been highlighting this issue in the local authority. But unfortunately, we're now having to elevate it to a national stage and trying to address that particular issue. And it is a serious challenge. It's a significant body of investment that is really required. And I'm working very closely with the Minister of Transport, Eamon Ryan, to fight the corner for the Great Islands, for the Harbour, and for Cove, to try and get this issue addressed. I met with Eamon and his officials last Friday. It was a very productive discussion, and we had quite a significant body of discussion around the whole area of access on and off the Cove. I did explain to him that, although the Metropolitan Transport Area strategy will triple the rail capacity for the town, has to be acknowledged that the access issue can no longer be ignored, particularly at Belvedere Bridge and other pinch points along the route that have caused enormous difficulties and challenges and barriers to investment as well. And I'm determined to get that issue addressed with him. And if it has to be done in a number of stages because of cost, and we will do that. I cannot allow a situation, in my own view, where this is not prioritised by government. And I've been working very closely with our own ministers as well. And I would strongly encourage the Chamber to keep up your engagements in terms of this issue. I think it's very important that local voices are heard in this process. So I'd encourage you all to send emails to the Minister for Transport, Eamon Ryan, to the Minister for Public Expenditure as well, because their departments are key in this process. And I'm doing everything I can to highlight it in Dáil Éireann as a member of the Oireachtas Transport Committee, as my party spokesperson on transport, and as a TD for Cove and for Cork East as well. So look, I would just like to say once more that the Chamber has been doing fantastic work over the last number of months. I've really enjoyed following your many events, and I look forward to engaging with you on a personal basis in the very near future as we move on from the whole area of COVID. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jane. Thank you. So a massive thank you to all of you for attending this morning and for all the support over the last couple of months. It's great to get Cove and Harbour Chamber out there, and we're really delighted to support all the meetings that we've had. Thank you to all our fantastic guest speakers, our sponsors, our hardworking team in the Chamber office, council members, Spike Island, and many thanks to Lee Gillen Events who managed the event and technology this morning. So just a heads up, we'll be sending out a very important survey in the next couple of weeks, and we really appreciate a strong response from you all. The survey will inform and progress some exciting developments here in Cove, but will benefit the wider business community, which, as we all know, does benefit us all. So don't forget to stay tuned to the Cove and Harbour Chamber updates and emails. We'll be having some interactive fun and networking events throughout the summer months. We're hoping to run a networking social event here in September/October over in Spike. And again, that will be up on Eventbrite, and we'll let you know about that. We'll be back here for the Business Breakfast Series on Friday, the 10th of September, with our first speaker is Simon Fives, site leader with Pfizer's, where I'm sure there's been some very interesting developments over the last 12 months or so. So good morning to you all, and thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joanna.
Thank you, Joanna.
Thanks, Joanna. That was very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, great job. Well done.
Thank you.